right at the top of the hour. Look at us, all punctual. That's
No, I'm
great.
so impressed, Peggy. You're doing so good. You're always
Well,
right
well,
on time.
I know that's so great. Well, Laura was just sharing her wins about, good things about, helping people. When you say I don't know what to make of that, I see that as the natural outgrowth of your dedication and your love for what you do. And I'm having all these ideas, um, of ways to share with you how to leverage those stories. Obviously, you can't make medical claims, but you can, say general things, and we'll talk more offline. But I
Okay.
think that's so great, and I think that's fulfilling your purpose in life,
And,
right?
and two of the people that it is, two of the people that I referred to, the journalist, and it's a journalist that did our last interview. And if
Yeah,
you've ever dealt with journalists, they are notoriously wrong.
yeah,
But I sent her to a doctor at IHC who's going to speak with her and be interviewed, and same with an expert at Weber State. So while I can't make claims, I'm starting to get medical people on board.
yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's great.
yep.
That's so great, and just keep visualizing helping more and more people like that, because it's so powerful. And anecdotally, I'm also seeing online a lot of light therapy things, and I'm like, Laura's got the best. So make sure people know. So that's great. Lisa, it's good to see you. How are you doing?
I am making it. I'm good. I see a lot of red light therapy stuff online now. And is that the same? Is that like
Not
similar?
necessarily, but it's close. So there's a lot of different types of red light therapy. We can talk about it later.
Like the algorithm is listening in on our conversation or
Right?
something, because all of a sudden I'm seeing all this stuff.
Yeah.
So,
it's more your awareness too, and
oh
that's
yeah.
good. Awareness is good.
No, that's so good. I think that's great. Well, here we are. Lesson 10. Can you believe it?
Wow. No.
The one thing you can't hide. One thing you can't hide. If you haven't listened to this, excuse me, it is a gem. It's kind of a throwback and a little bit old school, but it is so powerful. And the one thing you can't hide, spoiler alert, if you haven't read it or listened to it yet, is your vocabulary and use of grammar. And, when I was reading through this, I thought, gosh, that is just so old school. Like I was raised by English teachers in the form of my grandmother and my aunt, and my mom wasn't a teacher, but they all, drilled grammar and proper usage of the English language into me. So I was thinking, well, Earl created this program back in the 60s. Maybe that's a vestige of a bygone era, to use some fancy words. And then I was like, you know what? No, it's not. It's really not. And I love this lesson. And I think you could sleep on it, as my kids would say, but don't sleep on this lesson. It actually is very good. We can go through it, and I can give you a high level recap, or net it out, as my husband would say. But I want to check in with you, and I wanted to talk to you about momentum. Consistency, persistence, and momentum. And for these next lessons, that's one thing that I'm setting an intention to help all of you with, is persistence, consistency in your work and your daily method of operation or your study. We can go more into that. But then what that does is it leads to momentum. And it's so much easier. Has anybody had a feeling of like getting momentum, and then also had the feeling of getting momentum and then getting stuck again? Right.
Sure.
So the power here is to really build up consistency and get some momentum going. So let's talk about it. What are your thoughts on this topic?
Lisa?
Okay, I'll go.
Yay.
No, I think momentum comes as a result of study. And when you're in this every day, and you carve out a little piece of time, and you're doing this every day, and I think after a certain amount of days, maybe weeks, that momentum really starts to build. But if you're not consistent, right? That's the word. Then it's really hard to build that momentum. And even if you think it's building, it's really hard to lose it.
Yeah.
Because, that's my experience. And that I think, I've been studying every day for, 10 days now, and I'm really feeling it. And, I'm, manifesting white feathers and all that, and everything's happening. And then I don't know, I lose it. Just as easily as it got built, because something comes up, or my schedule gets busy, or now I'm tired. I'm not going to get out of bed at 5 a.m., to do anything. So,
Yeah.
and then once you make that excuse the first time to not do it, it's so much easier to continue to make that excuse.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and I'm
Well,
not making an excuse. I mean,
no,
I mean,
you're
my
not.
there.
I don't hear it as an excuse, Lisa. I hear
Yeah.
it as an observation.
Yeah.
Facts on the ground.
Right. And I know my momentum isn't where it needs to be, because again, I've been super busy, and I'm not trying to make an excuse, and I could still carve out time to do this, and I just haven't, I just haven't done it. It's been like a week since
Yeah.
I've studied,
Yeah.
and I've been in this, the PMP boot camp, project management.
Mhm.
And it's like, you talk about drinking from a fire hose. Oh my gosh. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Well, we'll talk about that. We'll talk
Okay.
about building the habit, but I didn't expect, I didn't like front run this and expect you guys to have an answer, but it's
Oh.
something I've been paying attention to in several different domains in my life, and observing my own starting, stopping, starting, stopping. And I've kind of, excuse me, not kind of, I've gotten to the point where I'm like fed up with my own inconsistency, because I'm doing the work anyway. And it's just, if I did it, 20% more, my results would improve by 1,000%. You know what I mean? Like there's a
Right.
tipping point at which your vibration, your mood elevates, your vibration elevates, your perception elevates, your outlook, your positivity, your attitude, what you're attracting to you gets easier and easier, and like with Lisa, with Laura, you were talking about the income at the center, but you're like, hey, I'm chill, it's good, it's happening.
I
And
wasn't really chill.
Okay.
Today I'm chill. I was not
Okay.
chill on, let's say, Saturday. I worked there Saturday all day by myself. And when I came home, I was pretty sad.
Okay. But here you are,
Yeah.
here
I'm
we
good
are,
now.
and you're good now,
Good
and
now.
it's good and getting better. Hey, Joni, welcome. Good to see you. So that's that. So I just feel that this is so important. I'm following my intuition. And there's tips and tricks and techniques that we can talk about. But the important thing is to understand the what and the why. Like what are we doing and why is it important? And for example, I recently started working out with a trainer, and then back to your point, Lisa, it's not an excuse. Well, it was an excuse. My daughter was in the hospital, and I was in Boston and New York for a week and a half, or going on 2 weeks. And then I was in Hawaii, and it rained the whole time, yada, 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 yada. Where there's a will, there's a flippin' way. So, even if I just did a little bit, it would have meant the world, because it would have meant I was keeping my promise to myself. So when we talk about this mindset work, keep in mind the knowing doing gap, the relationship of the conscious mind, the 2 to 5% of our results. It's very powerful because that's where our higher faculties are available to us. Remember those? Imagination, reason, will, intuition, perception, memory. We can use those tools to create whatever we want. So that's extremely powerful. But in the absence of consciously creating what we want, the old paradigm programming will have its way with us. And that programming for 99 out of 100 people is to live from the outside in. You feel good when the money's in the bank. You don't feel so good when the money's not in the bank. Now, I'm not saying don't pay attention to that and do something about it, but what mood are you in? What attitude are you in? How are you feeling about it? What are you likely to attract to yourself? And by the way, as we up-level ourselves through awareness and knowledge and study, less of that comes into our environment because we are thinking of ways to go from 20 to 40 or 40 to 100, or you know what I'm saying? So in the absence of really working this, I'd say a good solid 5 out of 7 days a week for the rest of your life, you're going to get spotty results. Because the pull, I mean, we're all, nobody has to say their age here. I'm probably the oldest. Absolutely, I'm the oldest. My paradigms, my programming, my reactivity, my neural pathways have been in motion for 63 years. So my default settings are pretty ingrained. And what we're doing here is making new neural pathways, making new emotional pathways, making new, brain processes and mind processes. So that's why it's so important to stay on it. Okay. Anybody have anything to say about why it's important to do the work? Have I sold you? Not that I had to. I think we all understand this, but yeah, we do. But then the question becomes, okay, so now we get it. We get why it's important. We get what the what is. But now the question is, how do we build the habit of doing the work? Because remember, habits are God's, I forget what the quote was, it was in TIR. Somebody said habit is God's way of making, results easy. Because once we make a habit of something, make it habitual, then it's not like climbing the mountain every day. I use the example, I just talked to my other group about this. I use the example of getting sober. The first day was without doubt the absolute hardest. The second day was a little bit easier. I mean, the whole kind of front-loaded part of it was challenging. First wedding, the first funeral, the first baby shower, everything is soaked in booze in our society. Yoga, rosé and yoga. I'm like, really? We're doing yoga, like what, with the goats? And so, people say to me, well, is it hard to be sober? And to that I say, absolutely not. And if anything, my life is so much easier now because I don't have to, there's never a day that goes by when I sit there and think, am I going to drink today? It's just like, that's a hard no. I'm a non-drinker. Like, it's become part of my identity. Now, in the front loaded part of it, it was hard because I was building a new habit. I was drinking like bubbly water and cranberry juice and ginger beer in my wine glasses because I was used to drinking wine while I was cooking dinner. So how does this analogy transfer? Doing the work, building the habit of doing the work on a consistent basis is not easy. I will give you that, but it also doesn't have to be hard. So maybe it's not easy or hard, but it needs to be intentional. I saw a quote the other day, nobody makes it to the top of Mount Everest unintentionally. Like, you have to be intentional about it. You have to be intentional about creating a new paradigm. And whatever works for you, do that, but be intentional about it. Like, really be honest and say, I know that doing this work can can help me earn hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. I know that doing this work makes me more at peace, more grounded, more centered, more joyful, a better partner, a better wife, a better spouse, a better business partner, a better employee, whatever it is, sister, brother, mother, daughter. So it's that important to me. So when am I going to have it in my calendar to do it during my day? When am I going to create the habit of doing it? It doesn't have to be at the same time every day, but there needs to be some intentionality around it, because otherwise, if it's not in your calendar, right? Not in your checkbook, not in your calendar, off she goes. So, so find a time where you can, at a minimum, listen to the lessons, and at least, I would say with TIR, 3 to 5 times a week, read the white papers with the lessons and do the exercises. They recommend in TIR that you listen to the lessons twice a day. And I talked to a consultant who said she's doing that. And she's like, after 3 years, she's like, oh, you'd be amazed the difference it makes. I'm like, really? Note to self, So, but if 2 times a day is a heavy lift, then do it just once a day. But it's literally like 45 minutes, 20 minutes to listen to the lesson. In TIR, go over the key points, how they summarize and do like an executive summary of key points, and then go through the questions. And in this lesson, it's more buried in it. In this lesson, like he says in this lesson 10, commit to 15 minutes a day. And I was looking at it, but Joni's our resident mobile app person, as is whomever. I think, Laura, you're a very techie person. All of you are, everyone but me. But there's lots of mobile apps that you can use to learn vocabulary. So he says, spend 15 minutes a day expanding your vocabulary. What a cool idea, right? So put this into your day when you're going to do your homework as well. And here's what I would say about those times when you have to fly, or you're doing the PMP boot camp, or things are going sideways. Do something. That's what I'm learning with this exercise thing. I have this all or nothing mentality. Oh, the heck with it. I can't go for 45 minutes today. Do 10. Do 5. Do something. Because psychologically, that makes you feel like, hey, I'm keeping my promise to myself. It wasn't the full Monty, but I said I was going to do it, and I did it. And there's lots of psychological and brain surveys that show that this is a good thing to do. Because then what happens is, in the absence of that, then the travel day turns into the I'm too tired to do it day, turns into, oh, it's been 2 days, and it's hard. So you see how this dovetails into momentum, right? Momentum gets going in one direction or another. It will get going. So I'm encouraging you all, and I just wanted to put in a note here. I'm here to help you. If you want help thinking about how to schedule it, what's going to work best for you, try some things out, experiment with it. I'm getting up at 6:30, not really a morning person, but I'm getting up at 6:30, actually at 6, and I'm on here Tuesday through Thursday at 6:30 on this same Zoom channel, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And we have a little study hour. So if that's helpful, by all means, join us. I'm not saying everybody needs this little pep talk, but it's worth remembering. I mean, Bob spent considerable amount of his day studying, reading, and then implementing it into his life. And that's what transformed his life and what's going to transform ours. So that's my pitch on being consistent, getting momentum, up-leveling your vibration. If you have a down day, do not beat yourself up. Do not use that to self-flagellate. Another big word, pulling out all my big vocabulary words. Just, we're here today. The past is the past. The end. Present, future, present, future, present, future. Okay? Hey, Jen.
Okay.
Yay! Come on. So plan it out a week at a time if that's easier. If your life's inconsistent or you have travel on Sunday night or Saturday night or Friday, whatever, pick a night and plan your next 5 days. These are the times I'm going to study. And treat it as a sacred time because it's your development of you time. Okay. Cool. Hey, Joni, welcome. Got any wins? You're here. That's a win. Okay, carrying on.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out the dang mute button.
No worries.
You're
Welcome.
right. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes. It is a win that I'm here. Thank you so much.
that's great.
And thank you. So
Nice to have you.
I have two wins. And so I will just say I've lost a little bit of weight and 7 pounds, and
Nice.
I feel it's a fine relief this past week. And so I have had no time to myself, absolutely no time. And so I need this hour with you, amazing souls and women, so badly. I'm driving, which is why my voice is quivering
Oh, that's
because
fine.
I'm on a bumpy road. But that's all. Just, I
Okay.
really appreciate you all. And that's all. Thank you so
Cool.
much.
Well,
Thank you.
no worries. Stay in the work. So we're
Thank
going to
you.
talk about lesson 10, which is kind of a short lesson, but I think it's a really powerful one. And then after we get through this, if anybody has any questions about their goals, their creating momentum, their daily method of operation, any ways I can help you with that, we can talk about that at the end. So I love what Earl and of course Bob are talking about here, which is how do we expand our grasp of our own language, presumably English in this case, on a global scale, but also in the field that you're in. And why that's so important, because they talk about you can be dressed in finery and then you open your mouth and it's the one thing you can't hide. And I just want to say, I thought, as I said before, I thought perhaps this was a bit antiquated, but I think it's as true now as it ever has been, that kids are, I see it in my youngest daughter, she texts, she abbreviates words, and I am a bit worried that her, not only her face-to-face social skills, but her vocabulary is not being enriched to the extent that it would be in the absence of that technology. And I'll tell you a funny story. When I was a child, and I don't know why, God rest my mother's soul, she was so into education. She had to drop out of college. But when I was going through some of the things in my parents' house, I found these flashcards that were literally, this big and had words on them, big words. And I know she used those with me when I was a very, very small child, possibly even, pre-verbal or just becoming verbal. And the interesting thing is I have a fairly extensive vocabulary. Math, on the other hand, we didn't get into those as much. But English, it just to me is such a blessing. And I'm so grateful that I have a fairly good command of the English language and just this deep curiosity about words and where they come from and what they mean and synonyms and antonyms. I don't know, to me, I kind of geek out on it. Math, like I said, on the other hand, not so much. Thank heavens for calculators. But when I married into my former husband's family, they had PhDs that they wrote in French and presented at the Sorbonne, which is a very prestigious university in Paris, etc. But the one thing, even though I hadn't finished my college degree at the time, that made me feel very comfortable on Park Avenue in those rooms, meeting and greeting royalty. And I don't say that, trust me when I say I'm not that smart, but was that I could carry a conversation and feel confident that I could understand what was being spoken about. And comport myself in a way that I felt comfortable conversing. So I feel grateful that for whatever reason, I fell into that. Now, if I were in with a bunch of scientists and mathematician, it would be a very different story. But the beautiful truth is, even though we're so wired, and I love that you have young grandchildren, Laura, what we know now is that children are absorbing information subconsciously at tens of thousands times faster than they are on a conscious level. And so exposing kids and children and young people around us to new ideas, to new words, to vocabulary is so cool and so important because they are just onboarding, right? So I say none of that to impress you, but to impress upon you that the one saving grace I had when I was pulled out of the tulip patch in Holland, Michigan, and plopped onto, 650 Park Avenue was that I could at least converse relatively well. And that was really just through the grace of my mother's intelligence to teach me words and the English language. But when I went back through this, I thought, you know what? How cool would it be if I committed to learning 10 new words a day? Or even 5. And so that's my commitment. I'm going to do what he says in here and spend 15 minutes a day finding a mobile app to learn 5 to 10 new words a day. The other thing he talks about, learning about language and studying your language globally, but also in your own field so that you can rise to the top of your field and become an expert and functional in your field. So I think that's the other important thing as well. And we talked about this in previous lessons, but when you know where you're going and what you want to do, it's so great when you feel like you have the confidence, and knowing your language and using it properly is one of the things that I think is valuable and helpful. And with that, I will open the floor. I really don't, this is very straightforward. It's 7 pages. It's not like some of the other lessons we've used. But it's interesting because Bob, the last thing I'll say about this is, Bob had an 8th grade education. And I know that he spent time polishing his grammar and his vocabulary. He told me he used to say use, Y-O-U-S, because that's what somebody around him when he was growing up said. And he realized how improper that was. Instead of, like use, instead of saying you, plural, he said use, like all of use. And he realized that that was grammatically incorrect. And so he put in the changes there, but he was so articulate, I think, and he still had some grammatical things, but
Bobisms.
Bobisms, thank you. Yes, he knew that. In fact, he had a guy who listened to a talk one time and was sitting, a group of executives, and was sitting in the back of the room like this at the end of the talk. And Bob went back to him and said, hey, notice you're not really, into what I'm talking about here. May I ask you why? And the guy said, well, I can barely get past it with your grammar. And Bob started laughing. He said, oh, I can explain that. I have an 8th grade education. And he said, by the way, what's your goal? And Bob said, what's your goal? If you had one of these C-type goals that we were talking about, what would it be? And he said, oh, I want to have a parking spot at the front of the executive parking. At which Bob burst into laughter and said, is that all you want? I can show you how to own the whole building. So Bob took it in stride. But I think there's something here that does make us better communicators. It gives us a better sense of confidence. And I think it's a fun exercise to do. What do you think, Laura?
Oh, you know what? I tease my family all the time about the way they talk in Utah and saying things like yesterday night. I'm like, it's last night. Last night, for crying out loud. Or Leighton, right? It's Leighton. There's a T, people. There's a T. So I totally appreciate both sides. I appreciate that Bob was kind to himself and realized who he really was, even though he might have said, use, do this. But I can also appreciate the words. And words are really important to me. They really are. But probably the words that are most important to me are the words that I say to myself in my head.
100%.
And so listening to all this, and one, studying more, I definitely need to make a DOM, daily operation, daily DMO. Do that. Damn, Dom, demo.
That's a TLA, 3-letter acronym.
Yeah. I like, for me, it still comes down to what I'm focusing on in my head. And regardless of how I say it to myself, it's what I'm saying to myself and in what tone and how I feel. The turnaround that happened to me this weekend was astounding. It went from I only have enough money in my account to make the next payroll, I hope,
Yeah.
to what do I do with that? What's the worst thing could happen? Can I survive it? How can I sell the pods? I mean, everything that you can possibly imagine in a failing situation I faced. And then I got really discouraged and said, how am I missing this? How am I not getting this? Where am I really in that much fear? Do I really dislike money that much? Am I really, what the hell is going on? And then I got a blessing. So for me, that's a big deal. Went to my son laid his hands on my head and reminded me of who's in charge and who loves me and what to focus on. And I let go. And that was faith. In these terms, that was complete faith, just letting it go, not ruminating on all the fears, knowing that I remember being made a promise. I know it was there. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And being completely at peace. And then this morning, all joy broke out, all heaven broke out. Right. And so I really think for me, Peggy, I mean, every book I'm listening to right now, it's something about money. Imagine that. Hold on, I'll tell you. It very God-centered, which is really important to me. How to Attract Money. I think it's a classic, and I love the classics because they pull in the scripture so much. And even though Neville Goddard doesn't believe that Jesus actually lived, he somehow gets a lot of things right anyway. And for me, it's staying focused on what truly gives me peace and moving forward. And it all fits. It all fits. Caring deeply about what I do for people, wanting to make it happen, not thinking it all has to be done by me. Thank you for that. This has been a whirlwind of a couple of days for me.
Yeah.
But knowing that we're going to get the donation program off the ground, knowing that the paper is going to do another article for us, just contacted me today. It's almost not worth being upset, because you get upset and then it all works
It's
out.
never worth being upset.
Right?
Spoiler alert.
Right?
It's just not. I mean, honestly, it's like throwing an anchor out behind a boat. I know you're a boater. It's like throwing an anchor out behind a boat because everything is okay, but we forget. We're just forgetful. That's all. And, I love what you said about faith. Excuse me. And knowing, the thing I think for all of us here, and this has really become a clear message to me, when I worry about business and getting more clients and getting the mechanical side of things, and how's it going to work and what am I going to do and which strategy am I going to use, I feel like dirt. Literally, it is the worst feeling in the world. But Laura, I'll use the example from my case. When I talk to people whose lives are being transformed by this material, then I think anything I'm afraid of is far smaller than the mission of leaving this planet, having touched as many people as possible who want this, who seek this out, who want good instruction in it and good curriculum. My worries about failure and all those other shenanigans pale in comparison. And I think, Laura, for you, and I want to just put this out there for everyone here and Kathy, tether to the feeling of the purpose fulfilled. When you tether, and I know you have a cadre of people whose lives that this is changing and has changed, and people out there who need this, whose lives this will change.
I know.
Then you're unstoppable. And then you're like, in your case, you're like, hey, big guy, you got this, I'm in my lane. I'm keeping this in alignment, and I'm open to new ideas, and I'm open to new ways that you're showing me. But we have a very narrow lane when you think about it, and we get into other parts of the business that we need to keep ourselves out of. Is that helpful?
Oh yeah, I tried to find the lady's email address that did the last article. I couldn't find it. Found somebody else that was in that kind of area for the paper,
Yeah.
and they didn't respond. And that's a perfect example of what's my lane and what's their lane. But he obviously reached out to the other person that already did the article, and she reached out to me. I couldn't have made that happen.
Yeah.
So I can do what I can do. But I also love how much you've taught me about not having to run faster than I can. It's just silly that's fear-based movement. I love I act in inspired ways. I love it.
Yeah, no, I think that's so powerful. There's a really powerful essay by Thomas Troward called Yourself. And Joni, I'll get to you in just a second. I see you there, my dear. There's one on Yourself, which talks about just this continual growth and expansion, not of what's missing from us, but what's already deeply inside of us. And that growth is the expansion. It's almost like water that comes up through a well pipe, right? When you bore a pipe into I just took a walk. There's a lot of water flowing up here, lots. But when you put a pipe into the ground, this water just flows and flows like crazy. And that's who we are and what we're meant to be, right? Bob talks about that creative process. We use our higher mental faculties to take that pure positive energy, and it has no shape or form. The formless substance, right, Lisa? The formless substance.
Right.
It has no shape or form until what happens? It hits the mental mold of our higher faculties, of our imagination, of our reason. We can accept or reject ideas and thoughts, of our perception. We can make what you're dealing with look small. How would somebody who was earning $1 million a month deal with this? Oh, they'd find a way to bridge the gap. They talk to somebody who'd give them a short-term loan. They do this, they do that. I'm not saying do any of those things, but back to your point, Laura, when you're up against it and you shift your perception, everything's already here. Ideas come in, ideas fly in. We've been dealing with a couple of things too. And all of a sudden, like, everything's in flow. And by the way, you feel so much better rather than being like white knuckling, like just holding on. So this being in flow, this being in connection, that's really, I think, ultimately all we really want anyway. And as I always say, the shiny stuff is just a beautiful outcome of that. That's the importance, again, of doing the work. And so you can be in alignment. You can drop the resistance. You can drop the by me and get into through me and just have that faith. and feel really fabulous and be in a joyful state. So that's so great. Joni, yes, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to think about it for a little while. Thank you. Before I comment, because
Okay.
there's a lot that's been said, and I feel a real connection with Laura, when you said, laying on of hands, and but I think I want to think it through a little bit more.
Okay.
So sorry, Peggy,
Okay.
I was premature in
No,
raising
no
my
worries.
hand.
No worries. I'm so glad you're here. I miss you. Lisa, what do you think?
Yeah. So talking about vocabulary and how that's the one thing you can't hide. Like I definitely believe that that is true even in different disciplines.
Mhm.
Like every discipline has their own vocabulary, and I've interviewed some people who they just look great, they carry themselves with confidence, and they come to the interview and they're wearing the suit, and they got the portfolio, and then they open their mouth, and I realize you don't know anything about this job,
Mhm.
and it's not, maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe it's not that they don't know. Maybe they weren't able to express themselves.
Exactly.
They weren't able to express what maybe they do know. And so I had nothing to go on,
Right.
So
Well, and that's the case with interviews, right? You don't get a second chance to make a first impression.
right. And I remember Bob was talking about, if you want to, I can't remember how he said it now. If you want to make yourself more marketable, no, I'll say it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you have to make yourself more marketable. You have to learn more about whatever discipline that you want to grow in, and part of that is learning the vocabulary, and so yeah,
Yeah.
that is so true. It's not outdated at all.
No, I think
So,
it's important. I think it's really important. And because the other thing is, if, for me, one of my highest values is being on the leading edge of things. That's just, I love that. I started a health food store 43 years ago, way early, but still, I can see the trends coming. I could see that there was a there, as my kids say. And absolutely, now that I'm in the field I'm in, I study up on people in my field. I study up on, best practices and how can I help my clients more and all these things. Because if you want to rise and be an expert and be in these conversations, you need to be able to be articulate. You need to be able to be current. You need to be able to know what's happening. And one of the interesting things is, think about it this way. I think this is really speaking to communication as well, which involves listening and comprehension as well as articulating yourself. The Eskimos, it is rumored or said or factual, I don't frankly know, have 27 words for the word that we use as snow. And why is that important to them? Because you need more words? No, we have lots of words. But for them, it is layers of distinctions about the type of snow and whether it's safe to walk on out on the ice, or if it's the kind of snow you can use for this usage or that usage, or if it's an avalanche snow, or if it's this kind of snow. And so by refining our language, we have more discernment, we have more distinctions. For example, here's another good example. I don't drink wine anymore. But when I did, we had some really incredible wines in our cellar, but I still never became a wine connoisseur. I enjoyed drinking really beautiful bottles of wine, but, there are people like Joni who have far more levels of understanding of different types of wine. So she could say, oh, this is this from this region. This is how you pronounce it in French. It's from this vineyard, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, it's red wine. So if, for example, Laura you are in a business, and you have a business, Lisa, and Joni has a business, and I have a business. Being good at educating people on why our business matters to them, why it should matter to them, and why it's valuable, and why they should part with their time and money to come and check it out. That also is a really important value for all of us, because Laura, I see you on the cutting edge, right? You're doing something, you're not just competing with Coca-Cola, you are the new gold standard about something that many people don't have much understanding.
Can I insert something here really
Of
quick?
course.
Funny? So we're talking about words, and my son was sending a letter to the oncologists at a hospital, and he said, "We are the new golden standard." I'm like, "We're not a poodle." Okay.
Actually, that would be a golden doodle, but go ahead. Yes.
It's still the standard poodle, right? It's gold standard. So
He's young. He's young, but that's very cute.
yeah.
But I totally get that. But when you're making a market, so to speak, which I was 43 years ago when I started a health food store, and and what you're doing, Lisa and Joni, what you're doing, I mean, the distinctions that we're making about our businesses and setting ourselves apart from the competition. Remember, we create, we don't compete. But why should somebody listen to you versus someone on TikTok, Laura? Well, I find that in any cutting edge, interesting, higher level businesses, it's really incumbent upon us to effectively communicate why our processes, why our products, why us, why are we the golden standard poodles? So cute. I'll never not be able to say that again. But why are we the people that other people should be paying attention to? And I think that also is vocabulary, and I think it can cut both ways. We don't want to use so much jargon that people have no idea what we're talking about. If I did a talk and said, well, it's your paradigms, people would be like, what? If I talk about habits, and as it relates to their problems, look, if you don't build new habits, you're never going to have more than you have today. We all know that. There's a bridge there that they can connect to what I'm talking about. But then giving them new ideas, new distinctions, new ways of thinking about things, new awarenesses, that's really an important part of communication as well. So we have to keep in mind colloquial terms that we use, as well as jargon. Like if I talk to my friend Dan Bick, who's an orthopedic surgeon, he would talk very differently in the OR to his surgical staff about what he would do potentially to my knee than he would tell me sitting in the waiting room in his office, right? In an exam room. It'd be like, well, we're going to remove your this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do this. When he's in the OR, he's like patella this and this, that, and so language is the power to create, is what I want to say here. And the way it does that is by creating newer distinctions and giving you the ability not to just know something cool that's new, but to functionally do something about it. So in the case of the Eskimos, the snow is important, that it's not just garden variety snow that's out in my front yard, just like the kind that's in Laura's front yard, right? For them, it allows them to function better in society and in life. And the other thing I want to say is that the most important thing, to Laura's point, is how you talk to yourself. And there's a benchmark that we can all use, that we should only talk to ourselves the way we would talk to the person we most love in our lives, be it your husband, your spouse, your grandchildren, your dog, whatever. A niece, a nephew, a small child you met on the street. You'd never say to them, get up, you dummy, when they fall down. You would never say that to them. You're gentle, you're loving, you're kind, and we deserve no less than that from ourselves. So I love that you said that, Laura. I think that's how we speak to ourselves and how we treat ourselves. You know, if you think about it, it's kind of a slap to our creator to be anything less than kind to the creation.
Well, that was number 2 thing you said, love God with all your heart and then love your neighbor as yourself. That assumes yourself first. The 2 biggest commandments. And it's not because we're supposed to be obedient and be slapped around. It's because he knows what will make us happy.
Right. So self-love is right up there. So I think that's really good. You know, and when you think about your kids, you know, it's part of it's a function. I mean, oh my gosh, my grandmother and my aunt. And I know some people on the East Coast, they call it the aunt. You know, the United States is a big place. So we have colloquialisms and we have ways of using grammar and saying things. And that, I think that's totally fine. This isn't to be the word police, but I will tell you, if someone in my presence says the word irregardless, a little part of me dies. You know, it's just like, or, you know, doesn't use an adverb properly, you know, doesn't uses a word that isn't a proper adverb. You know, I want to create a bumper sticker that says bring back the adverb. But yeah, other than that, I just because my grandmother and my aunt and my mother used to make me repeat it back. I'd say, oh, okay, yes, yes, yes. And they say, no, when you say it, you own it. So I would be regardless, regardless. So that has been drilled into me. But I think this is a fun lesson to think about. How can we be more articulate? How can we use words in a way that gives us more options, more distinctions, more discernment, and increases our ability to communicate, especially with the people that we're selling to, i.e. helping. Selling is helping, right? Sharing is caring. So go through this, listen to it. But the other thing I want to say is find a way when we get off the phone, off the Zoom call tonight, where are we? It's Tuesday. Make a plan at least through Friday of when and where you're going to do your mind work. I don't want to call it homework. That gives me also the shakes. And flashbacks to Sunday nights. But you know, when and where are we going to put in our self-development? Because the more we develop ourselves, the more we have. And we have faith in that. We believe in that. So let's put our money where our mouth is, or walk the talk, so to speak. And you're all welcome. 6:30 a.m. Mountain tomorrow morning. I'll be.
Oh, I would so be on that.
I know
I
you
just
gotta
wish I
work.
could.
I know.
It's,
I know.
yeah.
Well, you know, do it for yourself. Set yourself up. My office is a complete train wreck. I am happy to say, because that gives me an opportunity to organize it and bring order to the chaos. Bob would, you know, get the shakes in here. But I do know that, you know, organizing your space gives you more mental stability. So whether you do it in Dan does his in our womb chair in front of our fireplace, because he gets up at truly the crack of dawn. And he has his DMO. But if you want help with that, we can talk about that on Thursday. I can give you ideas. You can come up with some of your own. I think the key to this is just, you know, it's like the 2 guys that go to see the plate spinning, you know, genius who has 18 plates spinning. They walk out and one gentleman says to the other, how does he do that? How does he get all those plates spinning? And the other one turns to him and says, he gets one spinning really well. And that will help you get momentum. Do one thing a day, whether it's listening to the lesson. This one is almost verbatim. I listen to the lesson on my phone and I use a highlighter and I mark in the notes margin questions, ideas, ahas, highlight things. I'm a big destroyer of paper. What's the word for that, Joni? When you deface your books?
I don't know. Philistine is what.
I thought that was it. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's a great word.
But that's not my word. I do the same thing that Peggy does. So that was my husband's version of that.
Right. So this is what my workbook looks like. There are pages coming apart. I could get Laura's help, but I have 2 colors of highlighters and underlined highlighted stuff. So whatever does it for you though, whatever imprints it on you. So pick one thing or 2 things, excuse me, that are really going to help you stay in the material, keep thinking, keep using the distinctions that we're learning here. Make notes, have a little notebook of wins. I think one of the key things we can do is track our wins. Why? It builds faith. I had a huge win today, and it almost like it made me happy. I felt happy about it. I felt in flow. It was really great. I was managing this part of a project that I'm dealing with, and it went so well. And I just felt in flow. And then I almost like wasn't grateful for it. Like it wasn't like I wasn't ungrateful for it, but by virtue of the fact of being like, wait a minute, this was such a huge gift. It was so easy, no hustle, no grind, no worry, no doubt. And I just literally like took a moment, looked up and said, thank you. Thank you so much. This is how it's supposed to work. Thank you. So tracking those wins when things are going well, we have a very keen sensor for when things are not going well, if anybody hasn't noticed. But tracking things that are going well, tracking intuition. I had somebody who was coaching me at one point who said, you have such a keen intuition. Why don't you follow it? And I said, I get those intuitive hits, those plugged in downloads, but I forget them. Or I just, I'm like, oh, yeah. Well, that's kind of crazy. Well, there I go. I had a mother who was pretty on the edge there. Lovely woman, amazing, really. I have to credit her for everything that I am in many ways. But like, I'm thinking, is that a crazy idea? Like, no, write it down. She said, you don't have to immediately act on everything, but pick 1 or 2 that you're going to pursue during the day and spend some time thinking about it. Spend some time ruminating on it, asking for more guidance. Because the universe and God don't just say, hey, you wanted a lipstick, here's the whole thing. Now, sometimes that does happen. But occasionally, the top will drop in and you're like, well, that's weird. I didn't ask for a YSL top to my lipstick, but look, there it is. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, here's the bottom part. Oh, look, there's a really nice color in there, right? Using an example. But often the Lego kit doesn't drop in. The puzzle doesn't drop in completely formed. We have to do a little, mental work to put the pieces together and follow the breadcrumbs, so to speak. So this is the benefit again of building momentum, of being in the energy of the good you desire, of being in the energy of your purpose. You're just your unstoppable purpose and your commitment to do something every day to move the ball down the field because your purpose is too important. Your joy is too important. Your happiness is too important. Deal?
Deal.
Okay. If you find a good app you recommend, let me know. Joni's our research guru. I don't want to put more on her plate, but I know there's one called Duolingo. That's for other languages, but it might be for English too. I don't know. Any parting thoughts?
Nope. Sounds good.
So I have an instructor at the PMP boot camp who is Latina. I'm not sure where she's from, but in trying to describe some of these processes for, for project management, she repeatedly states that English is not a very descriptive language. Like you have one word and it could mean many different things as opposed to several different words to describe different styles of one thing. And so that was like, I don't know why I thought about that just now, but that was one of her challenges. Yeah. So English.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and English, I think, is for non-English speakers is a notoriously challenging language. I think there are other Russian, Chinese, but the rules are variable. You just have to remember pint versus pint, words like that. But I think that
Right,
points
yeah.
out a good thing, a good distinction, which is also when you translate French into English or English into French, you can do a word by word translation, but so much gets lost in translation because the essence of what the word and the grammar conveys is so imbued in the culture, and in the meaning is in not the actual word itself. There is meaning, we ascribe, you can pull out a dictionary in any language, but it's what that word allows you to do with it. And that's what she's, I think, trying to convey, is that we'd have more facility with these concepts if we had more distinctions within the language.
Right. Perfect. Well said.
Well, maybe she can teach you. Aha. Okay, people, plan when you're going to study for the next 3 days, and I'll see you on Thursday morning.
Love
Thank
you
you.
all. Laura, I need to reach out to you on some things. And Lisa, I need to reach out to you on some things. And Peggy,
All
I need to
right.
reach out to you on some things.
I'm here.
Love you all.
Love you too.
Okay.
Bye.
Good
Bye.
night.